What's up, everybody? Tony from Polymath Finance here. Enough of the background, enough of the promotion. Let's talk about personal finance. The first thing I'm going to talk about is something called the timeline. Now, this is something I learned back at when I was at Northwestern Mutual, and it was a way for me to learn a little bit about the client, understand their short, middle, and long-term goals, and then get the conversation going about retirement, right? What their thoughts were, what their expectations were. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through an example of a timeline using myself as the client. And so that way you could start to have the conversations with yourself at home. I think there's a lot of good takeaways. And so without further ado, let's dive in. So again, this is what a timeline would look like, right? Now, it's a little bit weird because a timeline would be much more, it would be entirely conversational, right? It would be myself with the client, and I would be asking all of these questions. Now, because I'm by myself, I laid out all the information, but I'm going to go through each one and give you a little bit of background and my thought process. And then what you could do is you could take, kind of my information as a shell and start to ask yourself these similar questions. Now, we're probably going to be completely different, or at least different in some aspects, and that's okay. But again, it's the same questions that you're going to be asking yourself. And so let's just dive in, right? First thing we always ask about is the age, the marital status, and the current and future children, right? We ask about the age just to get a rough idea, and so that way we can appropriately we can understand the timeline, the time horizon until retirement. We ask about marital status just to know that if you're not married and maybe looking to get married, or you're engaged, or you have a serious partner, it's just to throw out the average cost of a wedding, which is $50,000, and that's not to deter you. That's just, again, to get the thought process going about maybe saving for a wedding. We ask about children because they're not cheap, unfortunately, right? I have one child, as you can see here, and if you watch our videos, baby Joey has made some appearances. But yes, children are wonderful and beautiful, and we love them, but they are friggin' expensive, right? And we'll find out a little bit later how expensive they are. And again, not to deter you, just to get the thought process going. And so we're just gonna dive in. We're just gonna dive in. So current age is 30. Dream home. Why do I have dream home here? Because we don't want to know what your starter home is going to be. You might rent, you might want a condo first, maybe, you might want a starter home. What's your dream home? Let's reach for the highest. Let's put the most optimistic number, or your most optimistic thought about a home on paper, right? Not to set it in stone, just to something to strive for, right? And so my dream home, I want to own by the age of 32. And I do want to live in northern New Jersey, which is not cheap. And so I have it as a $700,000 home. The reason you're seeing $140,000 is because I'm anticipating a 20% down payment. Now, if you're a real estate mogul or a guru, you're going to say, well, you don't need to put 20% down, Tony. I know that, but let's strive in this example to save 20%. And if you fall a little bit short and you put 5 or 10 or 15% down, or maybe you do an FHA at 3.5%, that's okay. But if we put down 5% on a piece of paper and maybe you fall a little bit short of that, that could be the make or break moment. So let's just strive for the highest number. So dream home by 32. I would like a rental property by the age of 35. And where that number's coming from is a $400,000 home and a 25% down payment. Now, investment properties usually, or lenders usually want more down for rental properties, which is why I have 25% down. Where I'm getting the $400,000 from is, I went to the University of New Haven, so I'm assuming that the rental property is in West Haven. Now we're coming back to those pesky children. I would ask, by what age do you want all of your children, whether it's 1 or whether it's 10 or whatever it could be, right? And so I want 3 children, and I want all 3 children by the age of 37. But what's this $690,000 doing there? Well, the average cost to raise a child to the age of 18 is $230,000. That's over 18 years, so don't get too scared. So let's just see what that looks like. 230 divided by 18. It's like $13,000 a year. Again, not cheap, and not to deter you from not having kids, but just to think about, hey, kids can be expensive. And so if we're trying to save for major purchases or retirement, children can be an expense, right? But in this $12,000, that's schooling, that's tutoring, that's sports, that's extracurricular activities, that's groceries, diapers, clothes, the whole nine, right? That's not just, money coming out of your pocket and going nowhere. But again, something to start to think about. Like I said before, I ask about major purchases, right? You're married, you have your dream home, you have all your children. What major purchases do you want to make before you retire, right? What are your wants? What are your goals? And so one of my wife and I's goals is to have a Jersey Shore home. And so by the age of 40, we would like to own a Jersey Shore home, and those are also not cheap. And so I have $1 million, a 25% down payment. So by the age of 40, we're gonna have to save an additional $250,000. That also brings up a good point. Why am I putting the down payment amount here and not the full price of the home? Because the full price of the home is gonna come out of your pocket with interest over the course of time. That is true, but it's what you're gonna need to save by that age in order to, acquire that home, that dream home, that rental property, that vacation home, right? And so you're not gonna need to save $1 million in order to afford the vacation home. You're gonna have to save, the down payment. And so that's why that's there. Disney times 2, Italy times 1. How confusing is that? What this is saying is, do you want any lavish vacations, right? And now you might have smaller vacations. You might, take a road trip, or you might go to the local beach, whatever you may do. And sure, that's going to accumulate over time. But what we really want to know is, what are the lavish vacations? What are the bigger vacations? Again, we're talking major purchases here. And so with 3 kids, the prototypical, stereotypical vacation, we're going to Disney. And I'm going to assume we're going to go to Disney twice at $20,000 a pop. So if we come down to this $55,000, 20,000 times 2. An ultimate goal of mine is to take my wife to Italy. And so I'm just assuming $15,000 to go to Italy. Again, these numbers might sound scary and they might sound big, and they might not even be too accurate, right? But I'd rather overestimate and be able to save less than underestimate and potentially not be able to afford in the future. We are not setting anything into stone, and this is not, hey, you have to have your vacations by 45. It's just a way of thinking about it, right? And putting numbers on paper. Consulting practice at 50. Now, this is not going to technically cost anything out of it. I mean, starting a business costs money, but I have consulting practice at 50 because I would like to start a consulting practice by the age of 50, and that's going to reduce some of the retirement income I need to have saved, because I'm going to have additional income on the side. And so that's why I have consulting practice at 50. A lot of people I talk to aren't going to work in retirement. They are going to retire at an age, and they are going to enjoy every second not working. And that is 1,000% fine. I'm just, from my perspective, this is a loose example on myself. That's why I have consulting practice. Retire at 60. Now, this is a very, very important question, because the way I ask it is very strategic. What age do you want to retire, not expect to retire? Everyone expects to retire between 65 and 70. That's fine. But what age do you want to retire? The point of the timeline is to be optimistic, is to think in the highest regard of yourself and of your goals. And so I want to retire by the age of 60. And so that's why I have it there. Tony's time. When are you gonna die? No one has any idea. But guess what? Math is so much easier with round numbers. So I'm gonna die at 100. The reason we want to talk about death is not to be morbid, right? It's not to say, oh, you're gonna die, you only have, X amount of years left. The reason I talk about 100 is because if I pass away at 100 and I retire at 60, I'm gonna need 40 years of retirement income in order to survive, in order to be able to live my life. And so, excluding inflation, excluding taxes, I know all the financial gurus are gonna attack me for this, but just exclude that just for a second, right? We wanna talk high level here. What income do you want to have in retirement in order to enjoy yourself? In this example, you don't wanna just cover expenses and, go on a vacation every 17 years. What do you want to make? And typically there's 3 answers I get. I don't know. They give me their current salary. or they pick like 50 grand. They just pick an even number and say, I want $50,000. And so what I want to earn in retirement is $115,000. Why? Because I firmly believe that will cover all my expenses and allow me to live the life that I want to live. And so if we come over here, I have $115,000 minus $50,000, assuming that's what I'm making from my consulting practice, right? That might not be the best way to think about it, because I might not have a consulting practice, or it might not be a successful consulting practice. So if I want to earn $115,000, let's just remove any sort of buffer. And so 40 years of retirement income, I'm going to need $4.6 million to retire. And when I ask that, and then when I tell the person, the client, what that number is, take a step back, and I don't say anything. And it's a little bit awkward. And I just look at him like this. And then I say, how does that number make you feel? And there's a multitude of answers. Oh, that's what I was expecting. Wow, that's a big number. And some people say, holy shit, that scares the hell out of me. And that's okay. All those answers are good. The point of the timeline, let's come back over here. The point of the timeline is to say, hey, you're going to have all of these potential expenses, maybe more, maybe less. How do you plan to save for that amount needed for retirement? What is your plan? Do you have a 401k? Do you have an IRA? Are you stashing it under your bed? Are you going to use permanent life insurance? What are your thoughts on that? What is your plan? If they have a plan, great. Let's fine tune it. Let's talk about it. I'll help you go through it yourself. If you don't have a plan, that's also fine. There's plenty of time. Take a deep breath. We'll help you get there. But we do want to start having this conversation, because you don't want to wait until you're 55 and start saving for retirement, and have 5 years to save for your retirement. Now, if you are 55 and you're watching this and you haven't started saving, we'll help you. Don't worry. We'll help you, right? We'll get you there. Don't worry about it. But if you are 30 or 25 or 45 or 37 or whatever age you are, we have to start thinking about these things, right? We have to start saving for retirement, or thinking about saving for retirement, or at least the process you're going to take to save for retirement, right? And what I'll leave you with is this, right? It's have these conversations with yourself or with your partner or with whoever's in your life. Start writing down your goals on a piece of paper. Your littlest goal is not a little goal. It's something you want to do, write it down. Write down if you want to be married, or if you want to have children, and how many children, and what your dream home would cost, and what your vacation home would cost, or maybe you want a Lamborghini. There's nothing wrong with that. That's great. If you want a Lamborghini, write it down and figure out how you're going to save for that Lamborghini and get it for yourself, and do whatever it takes to try to attain that within reason. But also alongside of that, let's make sure we're not losing sight of retirement, of that end goal, the ultimate goal, to be able to enjoy yourself when you're done working. If you guys have any questions or comments, if you want to go through this example specifically, we are giving away, or we have, free consultations. It's 45 minutes. Book a free consultation. We'll take you through this. You'll be able to, I'll give you plenty of information to get the ball rolling for you. Again, if you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us. We are always here to help. Thanks.